This is a Flipping Junkie Podcast, episode 50. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie Podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. Another great podcast episode for you today. We're going to be talking with Rod Khleif today about getting deals using little to no money. And so I know a lot of people getting started, it's sort of daunting and scary to think that you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing that, and it always ends up feeling like you're throwing money into a black hole. It's just like going nowhere. You don't see results from it right away. And it's hard to have that faith and confidence that that'll turn into deals, even knowing that only one lead can produce a deal that, could make you $8,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. So, I mean, it's definitely worth doing, but sometimes that investment can be pretty difficult when it's a considerable sum of money to you that you're spending on marketing. And so today we're going to talk about getting deals using little to no money. That way you can focus on more of using your time instead of money, if that's what you have more of, if maybe you have more time than money to get started. So we're going to talk about that with Rod Khleif. He's a passionate real estate investor, has personally owned and managed over 2,000 apartments and homes as an entrepreneur. Rod has built several multi-million-dollar businesses. As a community philanthropist, Rod's work has benefited more than 45,000 underprivileged children and families. So he's a great guy. He's done has a lot of accomplishments, and really knows what he's talking about when it comes to real estate investing. And when I was talking to Rod about doing the show, we were talking about marketing and what we're doing this series of podcast episodes where right now we're in the middle of talking about marketing, finding these deals. The next part of the series will be talking about analyzing the deals and talking with sellers and putting properties under contract and moving on through wholesaling and rehabbing and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to cover everything, but right now we're in the middle of marketing. So, I talked to him about what we could cover, and I know we've done a lot on direct mail, and we're about to get into a lot on online marketing. But I wanted to talk about some other things that didn't cost a lot of money for people to get started. So, he mentioned that, he began with knocking on doors, which he did in Denver to buy some of the 500 houses that he's owned there for buying and holding. And, with that, and then also with outbound culling. So there's some things that you can do, and we're going to discuss all that today's episode. It's going to be a great episode full of information for you. And, if you're enjoying these podcasts, please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on iTunes, because that really helps the podcast get more traction, get us some more guests for the show to cover more topics, all that kind of stuff. So it really does help. I really do appreciate every single one of those. A lot of people have done it, and I really appreciate it. We're close to 200 reviews, I think. So if we can get that push, just take 5 minutes to do that. And if you're not sure exactly how to do that, you can go to flippingjunkie.com/rate, RATE, and it'll show you really quick. Just takes a couple minutes to do that, and I really do appreciate that. Be sure to check out our Instagram account. You can follow us on Instagram. Go to instagram.com/flippingjunkie, and junkie is JUNKIE. You see pictures of us in the office, and then the properties that we're doing. Melissa, my wife, is doing a lot of the rehabs and doing the design of those, does a great job, and it's got pictures of work being done on houses than the end product. So really cool to check out some of the actual stuff that we're doing with our flips. And be sure to also go to facebook.com/flippingjunkie and leave any questions that you have. So we're right in the middle of this marketing series for the podcast. And, if I'm not covering something that you want an answer to, definitely go there and leave a message for me. That way I can make sure to cover that on an episode. And I might even do a whole episode really soon, maybe the next one, where I just answer questions that you have about marketing for deals. So be sure to go to facebook.com/flippingjunkie, and junkie again is JUNKIE, to leave any questions that you have about marketing at all. And And if there's enough questions, I will do just an episode where I cover answers to those questions with as much detail as I can. And if it's something that I feel deserves its own episode, I'll get a guest or cover it myself in an entire episode. So thanks again for listening, guys. Really do appreciate it. And we're going to go ahead and get into the show about getting deals using little to no money. All right. Hey, Rod, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Danny. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We had talked before about, doing the show and, said getting deals using little to no money, because you've been real successful in the past on doing some outbound calling, door knocking, and basically, like you said, just doing the stuff that people, most people just aren't willing to do.
Right.
And before we get into that real quick, though, I always like to find out a little bit more about the guest, and I'm sure a lot of people out there listening do as well, as far as what got you excited about this business, what got you interested in real estate investing, and how did you get your start?
Sure. Well, I immigrated from Holland when I was 6 years old and ended up in Denver. And my mom babysat for money. We didn't have much money, and she babysat for money. But with her babysitting money, she bought the house across the street. And I think I was 14, 15 when she bought it. It was like around 30 grand. And then when I graduated from high school, it was worth about 50-some thousand. And although I flunked basic math in school, I could do that calculation, and I got real excited about it. So I got my real estate license. When I turned 18, I got my broker's license, which you could do in Colorado at the time without having the experience. You could just do it all through schooling. And ultimately, I started buying houses, and I ended up buying 500 houses in Denver on a buy and hold strategy. Wow. And I bought a couple hundred in Memphis, and I ended up buying about 1,400 in Florida. And I did flipping, though. I did a lot of flipping in Denver, and I made a lot of money doing flipping, and I'm a big advocate for it. I will tell you, I think you wanted to frame this interview around ways to find deals, and I will tell you the basic message that I want to give your listeners today is when you're willing to do what other people aren't willing to do, you always make money. And that has always been my framework, okay? So, for example, when I got started, I would literally go find out who's in foreclosure, and I would go knock on their doors. And I literally did it every night for years. And I would just say, hey, I'm Rod Cleef. I saw you're having a little trouble with countrywide funding. I help people in these situations. Do you have a couple minutes? And then I would list houses sometimes too, but I ended up buying a lot of those houses. So that's definitely an approach. Certainly, most people will just mail those people. But it takes a lot of gumption to knock on somebody's door. But if you approach it from a place of truly wanting to help them, and maybe you've got some relationships with some brokers in your area, and you can help them list it if it's not a deal you want to buy. But if you truly come from that place, they will see it and they will feel it. Now, if you're going there to if you're only thinking about yourself, it won't work. So there is that piece if you're doing foreclosure, knocking on doors. But of course, I knocked on doors driving for dollars too, just looking for beat up properties, and that worked extremely well also.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. And I think with anything that you do, if you're talking to sellers of properties, being genuine about helping people is so very important, because really, if you are in it just for the money, you could care less about them. It's probably a better thing just to maybe go after bank-owned properties.
Absolutely, because they'll feel it.
Right.
It's really, it's not even what you say. It's your body language. They'll feel you, and so, go in there really wanting to help. And honestly, like anything else, when you help other people, it comes back. And if it happens to be that you end up buying their property and getting a great deal, you're solving their problem. So, that's the whole mindset, is solving problems and looking for win-win solutions. And so that was one way, that I bought a boatload of houses that way, and listed a lot too, though, I will say that. But then, the other thing that I've done, and done that more recently, and as I mentioned to you before we turn the mics on, I am I'm doing multifamily now in a big way, and I do mailers, but the same thing applies for single family as it does for multifamily. When you're doing mailers, a lot of people will just buy a list, or they'll go to the assessor's office and pull a list. And what you'll frequently find is that the information is not accurate. And if you want to be successful, you literally have to drill down on that information and verify it. And there are a number of ways to do that. But on the multifamily front, a lot of those properties are in LLCs or entities. So to give you an example, and this may not apply for the single family as much, but to give you an example, I go to the Secretary of State and I find out who actually owns those LLCs, and then I get their home mailing address and mail them. But the reason with single family, what'll work well is once you get that list and you've confirmed that it's accurate, there are several places you can get phone numbers. And I have been very successful with an outbound phone campaign. And again, that's doing what other people aren't willing to do.
Let's get a little bit more specific. So for single families, if you got a list for absentee owners or something like that, what is maybe a way that we could, do what other people aren't willing to do and verify some of the accuracy of that list?
Well, you have to look them up, and there are several resources. And of course, you're gonna pin me down on the top of my head. We use LexisNexis. But I believe you can do it through white pages or, oh, darn it. You know what? I'll get it to you. You can put it in the show notes, because there is one that's like $1 a record where you can really verify things. And it actually pops up with phone numbers regularly.
Awesome.
So I'll get that to you, by email, and you can throw it in the show notes.
Would that be TLO.com?
Buddy, I have a team that does this for me, and forgive me, I should have had that for you. I apologize, but I'll make sure that you have it and your listeners can check it out. And it's very, very effective, particularly, if you're identifying distress situations like foreclosures. But anytime you see a property that's beat up, I wouldn't mail it. I'd call them. That's what most people aren't willing to do, and that just sets you apart. And you'll get some people that'll hang up on you. Big deal, you got to thicken your skin a little bit, but it can be extremely effective. So
definitely, yeah, I believe that. Do you know of any free resources? I guess White Pages will do it, where it'll give you phone numbers. Any other resources besides the one that you're going to send?
Some of them are a monthly subscription. I don't know of any that are free, I off the top of my head, but they're not very much money. Again, you're not going to be doing thousands. You'll do maybe a couple hundred if you're really ambitious, and then so it's not that costly. If you're mailing, it's less money than the mailing. So, it's very, very reasonable and very, very effective. So. There are some of these that I believe one of them is like a small monthly subscription. It's not even per person, so it's not very much. But I'll get you the information and make sure you can put it in the show notes.
Okay. And that'll be on the show notes at FlippingJunkie.com/50, FlippingJunkie.com/50 for anybody that wants to check on that. But
awesome.
Can we go back? Let's take a step back and go back to the door knocking, because I want to get into specifics about the process. And I know there's a lot of ins and outs, and I'm sure a lot that you've learned from your experience in doing it. I know I did it a couple times, and it just wasn't for me. And that's what you're saying. For most people, it's just not for them. And so if you're able to do it, there's not much competition at all.
There really isn't. There was one other guy in Denver that was doing what I was doing, and we'd race to the houses. And, that was it. And Denver is 2 million people. And I was doing it in Denver County. And so, frankly, I'd be surprised if any of you that are listening, if you've got anybody that's doing it, particularly if you're talking about foreclosures. Right. It's just, people are afraid of it, but there's no reason to be if you're coming from a place of wanting to help. Okay. Right. And very few people will get ugly. Very, very few. I could count them on one hand where they've raised their voice and told me to leave. Some of them will say, I'm not interested, and shut the door. Sure, you're going to get that. But, guys, I bought hundreds of houses that way, literally. So, it works. But
So what was your plan of attack for that? So you get a list, right? You've got a list of these notice of default and...
Yeah. I'd get the list. Then I'd I'd map out, where I was going to go, and I'd do it, and this is another thing most people aren't willing to do it. Yeah, you got to kind of do it early evening when they're at home. So I would start about 5:15, and I'd go for a couple hours. And so, I would route myself out. And back then it was, gosh, I had to use an actual map. That's how long ago this was.
Oh yeah.
Now you've got all kinds of resources for that. But and I would go knock, literally just pull up, knock on the door and say, hey, I was down at the courthouse and I saw you having some trouble with whatever the mortgage company name is. And, I specialize in helping people out of these problems. If you've got a couple minutes, let me see, let's chat for a minute. And that was it. Real soft, caring, genuine, and then you get in and you go through, their situation. What do you owe? What do you think it's worth? What are you trying to do? Do you have an interest in selling? Maybe you've got some hard money resources you can give them for potential second mortgages, but that some of them still hold out hope that they can save the house, and sometimes you have to give them some reality. But but again, it worked very, very well. It also worked very, very well with beat up houses too. Right? Literally just going up and saying, hey, I saw you driving by and I've got some houses in the area and I love buying them. You have any interest in selling? Boom.
Yeah, and I love the how you mentioned the fact that they have other options. So
right,
and I think that would be where people would open up a little bit more, and so I'm sure that you probably spent a little bit of time building rapport. And, if they invite you into the home and then you sit and talk with them a little bit, not straight down to business because they've got to let their guard down a little bit.
No, you have to build rapport. And even if that the reality of them getting financing is like 0 to none, you can still say, hey, listen, call this guy, see what he says. I don't want to give you any false hope, but you can try it and just offer, solutions. Sometimes they have to work their way into reality, and sometimes you have to help them do that. But most people listening won't do this, but the ones that will be very glad they did. So
yeah, and so it's not just getting in there and then saying, okay, let me find out everything about the house, how much you owe, and
right.
When the all that information, and then walk around, look at the house, and then make them an offer.
No, you might actually start out saying, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
How'd you get here? What's going on? And let them talk for a little bit. They need to vent. They need to be heard. They need to be validated. And then go into, what do you think your options are? Ask them, what do you think your options are?
Good point. Yeah.
And if you ask it like that, then they come up with the answers, and you can direct the conversation through questions, and that's the most powerful way. Any guys listening that are buying houses, anytime you're dealing with a seller or even a situation in distress like this, use questions to guide the conversation, and you can let them answer the questions the way that guide them into going where you want them to go. The way that, and if that makes any sense.
No, it does. Yeah. And I like how you ask them what options they've looked into, because
right.
They might say, well, I didn't know I had any.
Right. No, a lot of them don't. And, you'll find houses that are empty. They just left, they think they don't have any options, but they always do. And it's a shame, even cash for keys sometimes from these banks. But, it's so that's one way. And that's been very successful for me. Honing in on the mailing list and making sure it's accurate has been very successful for me.
With the door knocking, were you following up? So say somebody wouldn't come to the door. Is that something, would you come back at a different time another day, or would you just keep going down the list?
Oh, if I knew they were still there, I would definitely come back. And typically what I do is I do evenings during the week, and then I go on a Saturday and try to catch, just really spend 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday going back to the ones I didn't get. Yeah, no, I'd go back, and I'd always leave a card. And my card said something like Foreclosure Assistance Specialist or something. I mean, it's been so long, I've tried to think what my card said, but something along those lines, and the card on the back would say, hey, if you need some help, call me, I can help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard of people using like a pamphlet or something, making a trifold brochure that has testimonials and different information about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I wasn't sophisticated enough to do that, and I did. Probably would have been good to have testimonials. I didn't even know what they were back then when I was doing it. I was in my early 20s, but it worked. It worked very, very well, and I highly recommend it.
Awesome. Did you have a system in place or some way to follow up with people that you talked to that you gave them options and they weren't ready really to take any of them yet?
Yeah, sure. Back then I used Lotus 1, 2, 3, but it's like an Excel. It's the the precursor to Excel, and yeah, you absolutely you definitely put the people on an Excel spreadsheet with their phone numbers, with your notes when you get home, and then when you need to follow up with them. And there are lots of free CRM programs you can use. We use Simple CRM here now in our relationships. When we're building broker relationships for buying multifamily properties, and we have to reach out to them regularly. So we use Simple CRM for that. And so, that's highly recommended. I think if it's not free, it's very cheap.
Yeah. So if you consider, most people won't go out and do what we just talked about. They won't get the list and go and door knock. They'll send letters like everybody else, and these people have a stack of 30 letters and postcards.
Exactly.
You're one of the few that are doing that. And then if you talk to them or don't talk to them, you're following up. And so even if there are a few people also doing that, I can almost guarantee you they're probably not following up very much. They're just kind of hitting one time. If they can get them, great. If not, then they just move on.
Well, one thing you could also do that seemed to work fairly powerfully as well is have handwritten notes with invitation type envelopes. And when you get to the house, if they're not at the door, sit there for a second, stick one of these letters in, "Hey, I missed you," and hand address it right there in front of the house and put it in their mailbox. And just say, "Hey, I missed you. I can help you with your situation." If you've got a trifold with testimonials, that's even better. Testimonials that say, "Hey, he helped me out of my problem," or whatever things that are relevant to somebody in trouble. That was also very powerful. If you can also, now I've learned a lot about mailing and do it very successfully again for multifamily, but it's the same thing. You put a picture on there. That can also massively increases your response rate for that. So,
right, yeah, good ideas. Now, so we talked about you door knocking for pre-foreclosures.
Right.
Were there any? And then you said also distressed houses. So, if like driving for dollars, you find these houses that are pretty beat up. Are there any other?
Yeah, well, not just houses. I mean, you could do the same thing with little plexes, duplexes, triplexes, quads. I mean, you guys, I assume your listeners are trying to flip stuff like that as well. And anytime you see a beat up property, period, I would go up, find out who the owner is, or look it up using the resources we'll have on the show notes, and call them. Just call them. Don't mail them. Call them and just say, "Hey, listen, I saw that property. I've got one nearby and would love to have more. You ever thought about selling?" And great opportunity to find deals.
Okay. And the door knocking, were you basically doing that mostly just for the pre-foreclosures? Were there other lists that you would target with the door knocking?
No, it was just pre-foreclosures. Okay. Yeah, because it worked. Because it worked so well. I mean, when you've got motivation. Those are your best deals. And those of you that are flipping actively know that, if you've got they have to sell, they have to get out. It's a divorce. It's whatever the reason, business failure, job loss, whatever. If they're motivated, you're going to get a better deal and you're going to arrive at a win-win solution.
Right. Yeah. And what I like about that also is that I think some people, will bury their head in the sand a little bit. So even though they receive letters, they're receiving letters from attorneys about bankruptcy. They're receiving letters from realtors about listing the property. They're receiving letters from investors wanting to buy the house. And it's overwhelming. They're stressed out. They don't know what to do. And
that's why your attitude and you got to feel it. I mean, literally, and this is going to sound really corny, and I get it, but trust me, it works. When right before they open the door, you think to yourself, "I love you." And you think that when they answer the door, and they will feel it, okay? And I know that sounds corny, guys. I've studied sales for years. It works, okay? So just something along those lines. I really care about you, and ideally feel that way. I mean,
Right,
ideally be compassionate. Okay. These people are going through the toughest time in their life. And so, it's great if you don't fake it. Okay. And I'm telling you, you're going to help a lot of people if you decide to take this on. You will help a lot of people. I mean, there's karma in this world, and you'll be developing some great karma.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And the calling. So you did, make it more accurate, actual outbound calling.
Yep.
That you've done successfully. Some of the stuff that you talked about where you take and you find people's phone numbers and call them. Do your listeners just flip houses, or do they also occasionally flip like some multifamily units? Oh, I'm sure there's some of them do, yeah.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, I flipped an apartment complex here in Sarasota, made $100,000. So guys, there's some big money in flipping, or $120,000, I believe. There's some big money in flipping multifamily. And this is where that honing that list in can become very, very powerful, because nobody does this. Get a list of the, say the small, so, some of you are going to have limitations financially, but get the small multifamily from 2 to 10 units, for example. And most assessors are labeled that way. Get that list, and most of them you're going to find are going to be titled in the name of LLCs. Nobody does this. Take the time, go to the county, find out who the owners of that LLC are with their home addresses, mail them at their home addresses. Have you ever thought about selling? Or I've got a property in the area with a picture of you and your wife, or just you, and I need to buy a house this year for tax reasons, or property this year for tax reasons, whatever. I'm sure you've talked about all the different mailing methodologies, but that list is going to be so much better and such a better response rate than sending to the list that prints automatically with the LLC. It's probably their registered agent. It could be their attorney, and it's just going to go in the trash. Then, if you want to take it to the next level, you take the owner of that LLC and you call them, and that is when it really exponentially works. So, and that's what we do, and we're very, very successful. We do it with mobile home parks, and we do it with apartment buildings, and it works. And you can find deals, and you can wholesale them, you can flip them. There's some great opportunities.
Yeah, because everybody's mailing to absentee owners and looking single family properties for the most part. So
right.
You're right. It's a lot less competition, I'm sure.
No question.
Now, when you do that research and you do call these people, I'm sure inevitably you get a lot of people that are a little bit freaked out, because it's titled in their LLC, and really it's not typically something that's easily found, and so they know
you'll get that sometimes. Just say, your LLC is public record, and I'm not trying to alarm you in any way. I saw your property. I was very interested in it, which is why I did a little bit of homework to find you, and please. If I've offended you, forgive me. If you're not interested in selling now, is it okay if I call you in a year and develop a database? I mean, if you're committed to this and you're committed to your market area, start developing a database and start. I know a guy that makes, and I'm not exaggerating. I know a guy that all he does is call on mobile home parks, and he makes $1 million a year wholesaling those deals to large players. Okay, there is big money in dialing for dollars. Okay, yeah. So that's the secret is to develop a list and do the homework. I mean, get the phone numbers, get the right addresses, and you're doing what other people aren't willing to do, which is the basic framework. And it works. So
yeah, building that database and doing the follow up. It's like where you talk, because it's all about timing, right? I mean, if you
sure.
get them at the right time, they're very interested. If it's not the right time, they might be in 2 months, a year, 2 years.
Well, that's why you have to do multiple mailers. Right. I mean, I'm sure your listeners have heard that from you before. I mean, you can't just mail once. You've got to get in front of them. And we've had people call us a year or two later that have held onto the card or the letter or whatever. But the key is, it's been proven. You've got to do it, and ideally different pieces too, not just you don't send the same thing. You send it in different ways, different envelopes, different formats. And having the system in place to be able to remind you to make those calls, to follow up, and send other pieces. And that's exactly why I developed REI Mobile, which is my CRM software system. Oh, no kidding. I didn't know you had one. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'll plug that right now. But I mean, it's exactly why we set it up, because you can't remember all of this.
Right.
And paper and files and even spreadsheets for me, I always had problems with creating them, then forgetting them, and then seeing them, finding them three years later and saying, man, whatever happened to this? I just...
Right.
But we set this up to integrate with Google Calendar, so I get notifications. So it's just, I can forget it after I set it. But anyway.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's
this.
awesome that you have that. That's a great resource. Your listeners should take advantage of that. I would like to say one thing, if you don't mind, Danny. And I was telling you my story. I had 800 houses when the market crashed here in 2008 and got my butt kicked. And I realized that my multifamily that I owned at the time did just great. And that's why, my podcast is about multifamily real estate investing. And, I would tell your listeners, those of you that are kicking butt, flipping houses, making a lot of money, consider multifamily to spend that money on and build an annuity and build a life so that every January 1st you don't go back to work. Be it investing in a business or investing in like multifamily real estate. Then at some point you don't have to work every January 1st, and so that I just wanted to throw that in there. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, no, checks in the mail. I mean, that's what
right.
That's what you
that's
should
right.
be. I think that's something long term for everybody to focus on. So flipping can become a job. You can set up a business around it, have other people run it, but what you really want to set up is long term.
That's right.
Wealth and doing that by having those rental properties or notes.
Absolutely, and my plug is multifamily because it just has been so good to me, and I think I mentioned to you I've written a book, and I'm happy to give it to your listeners for free,
Awesome.
And it's about multifamily real estate investing, and it's real good, 200 pages if I don't say so myself. I mean, soup to nuts what you have to do this. And they can get the book by texting 41411 and just putting my name in Rod. So Rod at 41411, and we'll put them on the list. But I will tell you, it's in final editing right now, and it's going to be probably 30 to 60 days before it's done. So please be patient. But
what's the title of it? What's the title of the book?
Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. It's the same title as my podcast, and it's really about building lifetime cash flow. With multifamily properties, and everything from finding them to talking to sellers, talking to brokers, to financing them, to managing them, buying them, contracts, everything's in there. I mean, it's soup to nuts. It's a really comprehensive book. It's not fluff, and it's just a way that I give back. But
that's awesome. No, I appreciate that, and he
absolutely.
said free too, so that's
right. That's right. I am going to sell
you.
it. I will tell you, I'm going to sell it at some point. But it's down the road. I don't have time to do the whole Amazon thing and all that. So I give it to your listeners for free.
Awesome. Well, the podcast too. Let me mention that because you didn't give the name. You gave the name roughly, but it's Lifetime Cash Flow Podcast. LifetimeCashFlowPodcast.com is Rod's website and podcast.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, we've only been at it for 5 months, but it's been killing it, and had some incredible speakers on there, from Grant Cardone to some of the rich dad authors to a billionaire that owns 45,000 apartments to a guy that just has a couple duplexes and everything in between. So if you guys have any interest, love to have you listen and see what you think.
Great. That's awesome. Any other tips for people for doing things that other people aren't doing to generate these leads and deals?
Well,
whether they be for single family or multifamily, whatever.
Just one. I just tell you one thing, and those of you thinking, God, I can't do that. 80% of anything, of your success in anything, is your psychology, and only 20% is the mechanics. Okay, and focus on the psychology. I do some little clips in my cash flow podcast about psychology. Every week I do like a 5 to 8 minute clip about goal setting, finding your whys, having pictures of what you want, visualization, manifesting, dealing with fear, all of those things. Make sure you're right there, guys. Make sure that you've looked into your psychology and your confidence and your ability to influence and your knowledge of this business, because all of those go hand in hand. And so that'd be my last little tip. Make sure you're good on the psychology part, because it's 80% of it.
Yeah, I agree totally. And that's why we started this series of podcast episodes probably 40 episodes back with foundation and mindset. And we covered maybe 5, 6, 7 episodes of all of those things. It's very important.
Awesome.
And yeah, no, I agree completely. And it's awesome that you share a lot of that in your podcast as well.
No, that's my favorite part, actually.
Yeah.
I love it. The whole psychology thing. I've been around Tony Robbins' environment for 16 years. And so, after 16 years, a few things stick. And so, I really enjoy talking about it and embodying it as well,
Right. Yeah, I'm a big Jim Rohn fan.
Well, Jim Rohn taught Tony.
Right.
So,
right.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I mean, do you have any books that you recommend along those lines?
Well, anything by Tony, of course, is fantastic. I'm about to get Gary Keller on the show, and he wrote a book called That One Thing.
Right.
Just fantastic. I've given away 100 copies of The Slight Edge, which is about just micro improvements in your life and the huge impact they have. Oh God! Of course, anything by Kiyosaki is fantastic. I'm sure you've heard him.
Yeah, great books. I've read all the ones that you've mentioned, and all excellent. And Tony Robbins does have some really good stuff. And a lot of times, you can find a lot of his, what he did for audio and some of the live events on YouTube.
Oh yeah, no, he's got a lot of clips now. He finally started doing that, which is, in fact, I think done huge things for him. But there's incredible content on YouTube from him, about the psychology, like we were just describing. Highly recommend you guys check it out.
So, have you ever walked on hot coals?
Probably 45 times. Yeah, no,
really?
I've done 4 to 5 Tony events every year for 16 years. I could talk about Tony forever. I mean, the guy has changed every aspect of my life. I've been volunteering at his events.
That's awesome.
On his security detail for 8 years. No, it's impacted every area of my life. Highly recommend it, guys. If you ever have a chance.
What is it like walking across those? I've always wondered.
It's all mental. And, they just had that big thing in Dallas where supposedly some people burned their feet, and I was there. And if you're going to try to take selfies and photographs while you're walking across the flames, I mean, duh, you're going to get burned. But, I've done that. The one they do at the UPW, which is his premier events, only about 12 feet long. I've done 50-foot long ones at some of his other events.
Wow. What do you put something on your feet first and it just go fast?
No, it's your body will protect itself as long as you stay focused. Okay. The minute you lose your focus, you will burn. But he's done millions of people that have walked across fire, and sometimes you get a tiny little blister that goes away in an hour. But the bottom line is, it's a metaphor to show you that you can do anything,
right.
And that's like I was talking about, guys. Psychology is 80% of this. 20% is how to buy a property. 80% is your mindset, and that's just that's a great example of that. I mean, if you can walk across fire, what the hell can you do? You can do anything.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the metaphor. And, some people do board breaking. Some people do, other types of things that they use as that metaphor. Tony's is firewalking, and he's very good at it. And it requires some pre-frame. I mean, he walks them through it. You visualize it, a lot of visualization. I'm big on visualization. You visualize what you want, and it works. I mean, I visualized all the exotic cars I've ever owned before I owned them. I had pictures of them, to manifest them, and that's, again, it's psychology.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in all of that as well, yeah. And one of my favorite episodes that I did was with Hal Elrod for
he's awesome.
Miracle Morning, and, I'm still doing that for, I guess it's been about a year now that I've been doing that, so.
Awesome, yeah.
Getting up early and spending an hour doing all those different things, so it's awesome. Well, thanks again, Rod, for being on the show.
Absolutely, buddy. Appreciate it.
How can people, anybody out there listening wants to get a hold of you, how can people get a hold of you?
They can email me directly at rod@rodcleef.com. That's ROD@RODKHLEI, F as in Frank.com. I take, I take free phone calls even through my website, about 6 of those a week. I'm booked out pretty far, but anybody that's got some questions about multifamily real estate investing, they can go to lifetimecashflowpodcast.com and get on my calendar. And come listen to my podcast. It's a lot of fun. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's Lifetime Cash Flow Podcast. So
cool.
Love to have you come over. And Danny, thanks so much for having me on the show, buddy. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thanks for being on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a great day.
All right, you too, buddy. Take care. See you.
All right, great episode with Rod. Thanks again, Rod. And like we said at the beginning of the show, we started talking about finding people and doing some searches to verify accuracy of some of these lists and to find phone numbers for people. Rod's going to share what he uses, and we'll have that on the show notes page as well. So it'll be flippingjunkie.com/50. That's episode 50, flippingjunkie.com/50 to get to that show notes page to do that. And so, we talked a lot about, making sure that you're setting up systems to follow up and do these things that other people aren't doing. So always be prepared to maximize every lead that you get, and everything's with follow-up. And, like I said, that was how, why I created REI Mobile and was using it myself before I released it to everybody else, because it really does make a huge difference in maximizing the benefit and converting more of those leads over time into deals. So check that out, reimobile.com. And thanks again for listening. If you enjoy the episode and enjoy the podcast, please be sure to leave a rating and review on iTunes. I'm going to try to reach 200, I think, is what we're real close to. So just need maybe something like 20 people, I think, to do that. So if you haven't done it yet, please take a minute to do that. You can find out how at flippingjunkie.com/rate. Thanks again. You guys have a great week, and talk to you next week.